All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode of A Shot of Wisdom. Really excited to launch this one where my special guest this time is Beau Haralson. Now, if you're in the marketing community at all, you may have heard of Beau. Even if you haven't, you've certainly heard of some of the clients he's worked with, like Nike, Southwest, Google. He's worked on brand projects with people like LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lindsey Vonn. I mean, this guy's list, his resume goes on and on of the cool things he's accomplished. But beyond that, he's also a father who's dealing with challenging family situations that I think that many of us can either relate to or certainly understand just what it takes to run a successful agency. And he talks about all of those things. So here's a couple of highlights that I love. Around the 4.5 minute mark or so, he talks about anxiety and having the fact that he's actually a risk averse entrepreneur. About 7 minutes into the interview itself, talks a little bit about his initial wins and then like how did he build from there. And then at the 9 minute mark into the interview is probably one of my 9.5 minutes is one of my favorite parts of the entire interview. This is the part that I think so many of us will listen to and really resonate with, where he talks about work-life balance, or I should say, I ask him a question about work-life balance, and he answers in a phenomenal way. 14 minutes into it, this part is just incredibly, it's deep. We talk about a family situation that he's currently still dealing with, and I think it's something that will really hit home for some of us. And then also teach us a lot about the human that Beau is. 19.5 minutes into it, he starts talking about how to take all of those things we just talked about and then create an agency where you as the owner don't have to be part of every single meeting. And that's a really critical piece that we've talked about with founder selling syndrome and others. So I think you'll like that. And then 22.5 minutes into it, it's kind of a fun discussion about how he creates an alter ego going into appointments. And then 33.5 minutes into it, he talks about taking care of your agency and the ability to tell your story, like actually making sure you as an agency owner do your marketing. I think this applies to any business owner, really, as we sometimes, where it's the cobbler's children have no shoes kind of situation. So enjoy this episode. I know I did. It was incredible. We're going to try a little Johnny Walker Black towards the end of it. So look forward to hearing your comments on it. Enjoy. Mr. Harrelson, good to
So
have you,
glad to be
man. So
here.
cool to have
Yeah.
you. I'm incredibly excited to have you on because I think there's some really cool things that we're going to talk about. Not think, I know we're going to cover some really cool subjects that are going to be really make an impact on the audience. I think that you've
Honored to
done
be
some
here.
really great things. So I already talked a little bit about it. They've already seen some of your information, but currently one of the founders of Human. Well, real official name is like Human Design. Is that
Correct. But
okay.
we've shortened it over the years. We've started as a design agency, and then as we've become more full service, we've just got to the root of it, and then our campaigns have really got to the root of humans as well. So
And you do cool things, and I know you hate when people bring all this up, but we all are just in awe of things like working with LeBron James and Nike and Southwest and Google and all sorts of really cool accounts that you've worked with. But I've gotten to know you over the last, I don't know, year or so, and I've gotten to know this entirely other side beyond just this incredibly successful agency guru. And I know you're going to just hate me for saying that, and you're going to tell me something about it later. But good human, which is also great for the name of the company. Good guy, good father, and I think there's some. And I know that there's some things to talk about today that are going to make a difference for the audience with some things that you're dealing with in your life. So, and then we're going to have a little fun with a suggestion you made, which was awesome. So everybody knows I give all the guests a topic wheel ahead of time, and they cover some subjects, which now I'm not allowed to tell him. He did not look at it, and so we're going to go like sort of like Wheel of Fortune, roll the dice kind of area on this, and he's just going to pick a topic. And we're going to put you a little bit on the spot. So I love that idea. So that's probably going to make the format for the show going forward. I love it. So just getting started though, you we're here at Traffic and Conversion Summit. You had the opportunity to speak. You did a fantastic job on Monday, if I remember correctly.
correct. Yeah.
Talking a little bit about some of your experiences with those big companies and things. What was that process like? How was it to get up on TNC? I know it's not your first time, but like, how was it? Like,
yeah. So it's always interesting. I think talks are a little bit oddly nostalgic for me because they basically make me live my life in reverse for a few minutes and then like kind of crystallize those ideas into something that ultimately I hope is a gift to the audience there. And so I think I actually am an original talk only guy, and so I build specific talks to specific audiences for specific moments. And yeah, I'll pick a slide or two out of past presentations, but this audience for me is at the center of my core. Being an agency owner is not an easy gig. I was reading a David Ogilvy quote that I ended up putting in the presentation, but the summary of it is that ultimately it's an anxious person leading anxious people, and as an agency owner, and I think that requires a different type of person to be able to handle that ambiguity and to be fearless in the middle of that. So I think net, those are the things I think about going into a presentation, and really, I hope it was a gift to the audience here. Definitely, if you're interested, look it up. I think there will be recordings available, via Traffic and Conversion Summit, and then if you become a certified partner agency through Digital Marketer, I think you can definitely get access to that content too.
Yeah, for sure.
So one correction though, I am not a founder of Human. I will not claim that. So I want to make sure we're good on that. I actually founded my own agency. For all intents and purposes, a smaller agency about 4 or 5 years ago, and then ultimately that was acquired by Human in the last year and a half. And so I'm there through acquisition, which sounds like maybe it's coming from a place of obligation, but it's coming from a place of enthusiasm. They were a team that I'd worked with and referred business back and forth for a good part of that 4 or 5 year journey, and so there was no surprises. It was just one team and one dream as I walked in and kind of brought my cog into ultimately a bigger wheel. So.
Awesome. All right. I always like to talk you up even more if I can. Okay. So we just talked about, you just mentioned some words that were just like triggering thoughts in my head. The journey, and the Ogilvy quote, which is anxiety in there, and some things. And I think as we work with agencies, both of us have the opportunity to coach agencies, work with agencies. Anxiety is definitely one of those things. So sometimes I think people look at you, and whether, I know you're a good, humble guy. We actually have a special guest behind the camera. It's Mr. Brian Plum from the UK, also a very successful agency owner, and he actually said your Instagram handle should be Good Guy Beau, which is absolutely true. And I love, this is great. This is the best part, is embarrassing you a little bit because you are a good guy. But people do look up to you because you've successfully exited an agency, sold it, that presumably did well. It's none of our business, but we know you, so we're sure you did, and you're looked up to in this world. You closed some really big deals. But talk to me a little bit about those days. Like, do you remember the anxiety when you started your agency? Do you remember those first few years? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people talk about themselves as entrepreneurs as like the lemonade stand at age 7 or whatever, and I've never been that guy. I'm actually probably the most risk averse entrepreneur that I know personally, which is kind of interesting. So I'm an entrepreneur with a lowercase e, and for me, I have to look up, and my period of making that transition from, hey, I'm in a department, or I actually worked on the brand side at a Fortune 500 company at the time. That's where I came from, as the brand side, and ultimately had an opportunity to make a few mistakes with some other people's money and learn a few things and form some opinions, and ultimately get the bug for the agency side as well. But ultimately, I'm a lowercase e entrepreneur, and so I need to surround myself with people that are okay to get a little ahead of their skis, and to do that, which is a little bit different than how I am and when I am actually skiing. I'm definitely the opposite. I'm a little bit more risk tolerant, and so I think as I bridge those two worlds and learn to gain momentum, I've actually gone, okay, this feels more like skiing to me, or this feels more like mountain biking to me, where I'm doing something precisely at velocity, like at speed. And so that's come through muscle memory. That's not something that's come through some magical story of me selling baseball cards at age 10 for whatever. Like, I've just never been that guy. I grew up in a less than entrepreneurial environment. But at any rate, I think that's been the biggest lesson. That moment where I had to step out with my co-founder of Climb, an amazing human being named Mike, and I remember like that first $1,500 check. That was a 3-month retainer, and then there was a second $1,500 check that came in, and that was it. Like, all right, we're going, and the fear that came with that, the anxiety of then going, okay, this person has trusted me to do something with this money to grow their business. I knew in my heart what to do, but I didn't fully know what to do with my hands, right? In terms of just to make sure that the stewardship of that money was ultimately going to grow that person's business. And as that confidence has grown over the last X amount of years of doing this, Definitely the speed and precision that we do that with, but there's still a certain amount, I think a healthy amount of obligation the second you take a check, either physically from a client or, as you grow as an agency from an AP or whatever, like an actual department, which is always a good thing. But I think that I think is healthy. I think there should be a certain amount of anxiety. I think that shows that you take this industry seriously, that you have a healthy amount of obligation to produce results, like for crying out loud. So.
Sure. So it doesn't sound like it was an overnight success.
By no means. Yeah, the first, there's two moments I think that were pretty critical. One is my wife and I were gearing up and our brains starting to get in hearts, trying to get ready for our first kid. And I had this moment where I was like, yeah, life is just not going to get any less complicated. Mm-hmm. It's going to continue to get more complicated. And so I had some mentors in my life still and then that were like, hey, that's the truth. Like, if you're going to make a jump, this is the moment. Like, I got news for you. Your monthly nugget and all that's going to continue to grow and expand. So take the jump. If you're ready, like, do it now. Don't wait, because it's only going to get more complicated from there. And then the second part of it is a whole family thing. Entrepreneurship, starting a business, coming from a place where you have 35,000 employees in a company to 2. The reality is there's the 2 quote unquote employees, but there's also the families behind those employees, and it's a whole family endeavor that it has to be viewed that way. And so getting that right for me was kind of priority number 2, along with just obviously making sure there's some runway and some clients in the mix to do this thing.
Got it. I love to talk to guests, especially people like you who are busy, who keep doing a lot of things. And we're gonna dig a little bit deeper in your family life in a minute, but you do a lot of things. Like, I got the opportunity to go mountain biking with you. You about killed me, which was awesome. Actually, it really truly was. And I had a fantastic time.
You kept the rubber side down?
I kept the rubber side, well, up until I landed in a cactus.
There was some blood, but there was no broken bones. That was good. That was a win.
Okay,
that was a win for the day.
That's funny. But, so you keep yourself in shape, you keep yourself going on things, and you've got family, you've got 2 children. Again, we'll dig into that in a minute here. You run an agency run an agency with others, I understand. You'll correct me on that one. But, and then you're involved with some pretty massive deals, and these are time-consuming deals. I think anybody who's an agency owner knows it's any client can be particularly difficult. I imagine coordinating, and I'm going to dig all into this, but like coordinating LeBron's schedule's even busier. Like, that's just that's a reality of the world that you live in. How do you find that balance? Or how do you find it? But I guess the first question is, how important do you find that balance? And then how do you get it?
Yeah, I think balance is the wrong word. Not to pick on the word, but I think a lot of people look for work-life balance, and I actually think that's actually entirely the reason that people are caught in that tension consistently is because they're caught on the wrong word. Okay. I like semantics. I apologize. But I think the right word is harmony, and I think that the concept of harmony is that there's melody and there's good gracious, the minor keys, right? Mm-hmm. And these things blend together. And so there's going to be times where you're going to be hustling, you're going to be putting in the hours, you're going to be at sprint pace. And there's going to be times where you can kind of lay off the gas a little bit. And I think for me to have staying power in this, I've had to learn how to lay off the gas, but also to view that on a little bit more of a wider range. I look at my life on a weekly basis versus a daily basis. So I think I gave up on the idea of a perfect day a really long time ago, and that gave me permission to sit down with my wife, to sit down with my own schedule and my own aspiration to go, okay, on a weekly basis, I'm going to be, full speed ahead Monday through Wednesday this week by nature of the beast. And Thursday and Friday, I'm going to chill out a little bit. Like mentally, I have to give myself that respite. And I might have to work a late night, or I might have to have that conversation with my wife. But if I look at it on a weekly aggregate, and I'm not perfect in this, I've given myself permission to go, yeah, it's going to be a 14-hour day on Monday and Tuesday. And that's just reality that we talk as a couple. But Friday afternoon, I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to get back in the office after that from 1 to 4. I'm going to be home by 5 that day, and we're going to kind of regain our strength as a family. And I think that's where I found more harmony than balance. And that, as far as what the heck motivates me to move at that, I don't know. I've tried to figure that out since I was in high school. I was the guy that literally was singing the choir, and I was offensive lineman and football team, and I've just always been a little bit spun up, and I think I'm just naturally curious at the end of the day. and have maybe a sense that there will be one day where the Renaissance man will be rebirthed, and I can know a lot about a lot and be halfway decent about a lot of things too.
That was really good. I love that idea of harmony. I mean, I'm a musician by background as well, so now I have other stuff to talk about with your choir thing, but for another time. But that's a great way to put it. Is that idea of harmony yeah, because harmony involves sometimes the melody and in a musical world. Not to dig, go down this rabbit hole too far, but like just that idea of sometimes the harmony. Is not harmonious on purpose, and then it's harmonious, and then the sum picture of it is beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you use that melody and counter melody to do some things specifically. So I'm gonna be chewing on that one. I like that. I like that idea. That may change the question for future
if you were to
guests.
ask me to balance on one leg for more than 3 minutes, like I'm gonna fail.
Right.
And at some point, that's the idea of balance, is ultimately counterbalance and balance, and all that. You fail. Like you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think like, as a happily married man that plans to be happily married for a long period of time, I think and having that conversation as a family and looking at that professionally over time is a far better way to set expectations and to let people know where you're at, where you're going, and ultimately understand the journey collectively together.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, so I do want to touch on a subject that I think is going to have again impact to the audience. Again, we look at people oftentimes, and I think you're in the agency world. You're well known enough that is you're one of those people who's looked at like, wow, look what this guy's got. He's got those things. I know you're uncomfortable with that thought process, but people look up to you, which is a great thing. And we have a tendency to look at people that we look up to and think everything is fantastic. Yeah. And a few months ago, I got a phone call from you. The things were not going to be so fantastic. That's probably the wrong way to put it, but it was going to be more challenging.
There's some expectations.
Yeah, there was some certain things. There was what was, happy news was tarnished suddenly. Maybe is maybe a way to put it a little bit. Yeah. Can you tell a little bit about that journey? What we're talking about here?
Yeah. So at our so we have a 3-year-old at the house. That's amazing. His name is Eli, and he came 2 months early. His journey for us. He's excitable like his dad, and he just couldn't wait to be in the world and taking it on and embracing the adventures for it. And so as my wife and I geared up for our second and knew that was going to be in the cards for us, we went in for our 20-week ultrasound and found out that our daughter was going to be born with a spinal defect called spina bifida. And so I was at that point probably 3 to 6 months into the merger and the acquisition and all that fun stuff. And I was working long days and mentally kind of spun up on that front. And it's as if in that moment, I don't know how quite to describe it, but as a couple, we had the harsh realization that I think that our son, Eli, was a preamble to a much bigger journey and was the precursor that had prepared us as a family to take on what was ultimately going to be a lifelong, for Amelia, is our daughter, who's now with us now. She's been with us for the last 2 months. She was born at the end of December. Was going to be a lifelong journey for us, and that in some sense that precursor had kind of prepared us, but there's nothing that could prepare us for the journey ahead. To be totally candid, I was angry, and I think like I had expectations that were, like, okay, we had a tough journey, and everyone says like, oh, you get one kid's tough and the other's usually easy, and all that was going into my brain, and so I really had to have quite a bit of dialogue. And as a person of faith, you have an opportunity to push in or push away into it, and I'm kind of the guy that will push into the relationships and the things that I know, and that's rewarded me for a long period of time. And for Jenna and I as a couple, we literally, I felt it in that moment in that room when we found that this was going to be a part of our journey. We had to make a decision to push together as a couple, as a team, to embrace the journey ahead. Not out of contentment or all the trite kind of platitudes, but out of from a place of resolution that we were gonna be able to work through this as a couple. That we were going to create as an amazing of an environment for Amelia to ultimately grow and flourish in, and we're early in that journey. I've not arrived in a place of, this is our journey and we're perfectly content with it and here's why. we are early in that journey. She was born 5 weeks early. She had a surgery on her spine. That's called a closure of her spine, not a repair. And I think that's an important word for me when I saw it on the insurance document, which came across pretty quick. And it was this reminder that, like, there's architecture within her body and engineering that's already been written, and I have to just trust that what nerves are going to fire and what like function she's going to have in her legs, and ultimately her bladder is going to be something that we just step into and hold with open hands. And I think as a business owner, fortunately, I've had a little bit of practice of holding things with open hands, and I think that combination of our early journey with Eli and us as a couple being married for 10 years now has in some way prepared us for what feels like an unpreparable journey ahead as a couple. But yeah, that was kind of what could be perceived as a valley, and I'm slowly hiking up that mountain, and we'll see what's on the other side of it throughout Amelia's life.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's an incredible story, and an incredible journey that you're on. And your attitude about it continues to inspire me and those around you for dealing with such a tough situation. As a business owner, though, and as presumably the breadwinner in the family, how do you make that transition to say, okay, but I still have to do, like, that could take your full-time attention, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
And your wife is obviously handling that amazingly well and taking that on, but it could be a full-time engagement for the two of you.
Yeah.
How do you then do that? Because I imagine there's a lot in the audience who are dealing with various challenges, maybe not quite to that severity. How do you go look at that and say, okay, now how do I get my head back in? I guess that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two different things. If I could succinctly put my journey with Eli, it was ultimately I was running a smaller agency at the time, and I had the moment and the realization that I could not always be the guy in the room. And as small agencies owners out there, I'm sure that hopefully resonates with you, that you feel like you have to be the person that's always in the room doing the thing and making the magic. And to some extent, you start to get to a place where you can delegate that off. But there's a playbook that you're playing from in your brain that is tough to articulate and train. So in his case, to recap kind of his journey, is I feel like I learned ultimately how to market and to hand off a playbook to a team that I can trust and will keep the kind of wheel spinning. And ultimately I get to step up in there and do some corrective and kind of ultimately chiropractic work on the marketing playbook and that we play from, which hint is largely based on digital marketers playbook. This new chapter of having to handle what ultimately falls on me is sales and strategy for our organization is I think an equal parallel to having that moment where I have to be in the room again, both emotionally present, both strategically present, which is hard on long nights and rough hours and things of that nature. So I'm in the process of ultimately trying to figure out what that playbook looks like on the sales side of things. And I think if you look at kind of the core parts of business, marketing and sales, right, and product. But my hope and my early aspirations are obviously working with guys like you to operationalize sales, which seems something like, for me, has always been more art than science. It feels like something that can't be operationalized. So there's some simple things like that. Introducing a pre-qualifier into the mix, so I don't have to be on every discovery call. For even bigger brands that I get more and more comfortable not being present there, available for that early diagnosis of what's going on, is stuff that I'm growing into. And I think that is a chapter of a book that I hope to write someday, that ultimately Eli taught me how to market and operationalize marketing, and that Amelia is teaching me how to operationalize this thing called sales.
Interesting. Great attitude towards it. It's got to be hard though because we've been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to be able to follow the journey a little bit. You've set up an Instagram account specifically for Amelia, so we can all be part of it. Which we really, I think, all of us. I know my wife does. I mean, all of us around it appreciate being a part of that, to be able to see. Yeah. And I'm sure we have no concept of how difficult it really is, but it's nice to be able to just to be a part of your life a little bit like that. But you got to have those long nights. You got to get up, but you still. I don't imagine just because to reference your earlier statement, oh, Monday's going to be a 14-hour day. I know that's going to be. That doesn't mean that you got to sleep an 8-hour night on
Yeah.
Sunday night.
Yeah.
So how are you again creating that harmony? I won't say balance. How are you working through that?
Outside of this thing called coffee, which is amazing, I think it's a matter of I have some small tricks which are that sound hokey in a conversation like this, but before I get on a call, I pick a persona of who I'm going to be on that call, or if I walk in a room. And so I have two personas, I have an alter ego and we'll call him an ego. And I literally make this mental decision, and I have a reminder on my desk, which, man, this sounds really hokey in this scenario, but this is a coach of mine that taught me this, and because it's just a mental jump. My alter ego is Curious George. On my worst call, my worst day, I'm just kind of the guy that just creates a bunch of noise and creates chaos, and then somehow maybe ends up okay, and I find the man with the yellow hat, and we're all right. And people are endeared to work with me because that felt kind of fun and crazy and whatever. But it turned out okay. I don't want to be that guy. That's my that's not who I want to be known for. So my ego, the person that I think I resonate with the most would be a guy like William Wallace. It's a warrior poet that has a place of poetry in his heart, a place of creativity, and is not afraid to step into a room and be a warrior and do the right thing for the client at the right time, and to make those decisions. And so it's a small mental jump for me, but before if I come straight from one meeting into the next, I go, okay, who are you going to be for this next hour? Are you going to be William Wallace, or are you going to be Curious George? And now that we've gotten there, it's a super small little trick, but then in my brain, I'm like William Wallace. I'm in. No matter how little sleep I got, no matter what's going on in my brain and he's got this appointment on Tuesday or anything like that, my decision at that moment is to be William Wallace for the next 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it's required. And then I just keep stacking that up on top of each other.
I think it's fantastic, actually. That didn't sound hokey at all. I think that was incredibly meaningful kind of thing that people can take away. People really understand.
So pick your alter egos. It's a fun exercise.
I love it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is watching you do that, because you actually just almost adopted the two different personalities while you told that story. And all of a sudden the volume changed and the whole thing changed. And I think it's powerful. And I love the warrior poet idea, right? And I think so for an agency owner, I was talking about this with someone yesterday here at TNC, just saying I think it's interesting because I think agency owners, maybe we were talking about it, but I was like, agency owners have a tendency to be part creative, part analyst.
Yeah.
And so that's a really interesting, so it becomes that warrior poet, that kind of the person who's this really focused analyst on check the numbers, check the data, check all this type of stuff, be keenly interested in that, the tweaks, the little things, but then this person who's let me think of the new campaign, let me think of this new...
And if anything, in the quote-unquote direct response space, I feel like that poetry is missing. And I think that if I look ahead of where we're going, I think people learning how to write in the correct stanzas and all the parameters of this thing called poetry and art, which sounds airy-fairy and you can't put a finger on it. I think the more that we, as agency owners, get ahead of that and actually embrace that art, number one, I think the better results you're going to deliver for your clients as CPMs go up and all the noise of all the channels continues to be noisy, which is just nature of the beast. I think you'll supersede that noise with better creative, better art, more thoughtful campaigns, and more intentional work. So that's my prediction. And I think that poetry is something that I've seen lost in the midst of gaming the system and hacking it and ninja, all these things that are naturally talked about in the direct response or more in that corner of the agency space.
I like that. Awesome. All right, so I think it's time for appropriately William Wallace to dig into the shot of wisdom theme here.
Yeah.
So can I tell the full story of how this transpired?
Sure.
Originally, Beau, when I approached him and said, just pick the show, I told you the format, and said shot of wisdom, and you were like, easy, triple latte. And I was like, okay, most everybody chooses adult libations.
New dad.
And your dad said, you know what? I'll switch to whiskey. So I loved that. It was actually kind of a cool moment to get that text message and say, is it too late to change? Not at all, sir.
Think about it. Yeah, we're here. It's been, and this is a family reunion for me. So amongst family and friends, it's just great to kick back for a minute. reflect, and just be amongst the community that served me so well.
All right. So today, since it's 5 o'clock somewhere, maybe in Brian's home in London, since it's that we've chosen a little Johnny Walker Black Label. Have you partaken of the Johnny Walker?
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah,
okay, so that's good. So allow me to pour you a glass of this, and we can taste a little sip, and we can talk about it. Though I think probably half the audience has tried this, or maybe actually, hopefully, having some while we do this. This is for you, my friend.
Appreciate it.
So let me pour that, and then there'll be more after the show. Don't worry, I'm not pouring in a cheap shot. Come on, people. They're all looking right now like, really? That's all you're going to give him? So cheers to you, and again, thank you for being on the show. So a little sip. Oh yeah, that's smooth.
Appreciate
smoky.
it. Yeah.
Nice. That's good. Family reunion, tell me about that. I love that. I think I know what you mean, but tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think at the end of the day, entrepreneurship's lonely. And I think that moment where you look at maybe it's payroll is coming up, and you're just trying to provide for your family and a few other people's families, or at any point of that journey, or you feel like you're crazy because you have this gut instinct that something's going to work for the campaign, and there's no one else on the planet that understands the context and the craziness that you've just succumbed to. I think that friends and within this space that understand to some extent what the heck's going on, that you have some shorthand with matter. So if I think about just this specific event 4 years ago, I came here a little bit shaky. Like the agency was a little shaky. We had things to learn. We had things that we needed to grow into. And I realized very quickly at the end of the day, if you're an agency, I don't know what the numbers are. There's fewer of them than there are of the businesses that we can work with. So that abundance mindset of going, okay, at the end of the day, like, yeah, for sure. Maybe there's one random account or person that can walk through, and now we're jockeying for position to land that person here at this conference. It's a terrible way to go to a conference with a bunch of other agencies. The first thing you need to do is lean over to the next person to the right, shake their hand, person to your left, and go, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Does that sound familiar to you? Have you ever been there before? And so starting with that 4 years ago to today, where I've had the opportunity to actually learn through some of the mistakes of the people in the community because they willingly share them with me, and they've hopefully had the opportunity to learn from some of the successes I've had, and hopefully shorten up that learning gap is everything. I mean, I can't think of anything more critical that people find within their space, short of an individual coach and someone that's actually helping them out, kind of materialize that on an ongoing basis. But I think wherever you find that, for me, that's been the digital marketer certified partner community. Find it, like write it at the top of your to-do list and go do that. Because the unlocks that have come for me 4 years later, and going through the journey that I've had as digital marketer certified partner agency of the year, and getting to work with some decent and big clients, has just literally, if I can like chalk it up to 2 or 3 critical moments, that's one, if not 2 of those moments I've been here within this community of having a conversation that unlocks something for me. So here's to family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. And you're so right. I talk to people about this often. And sometimes I'll have friends who are coming out of corporate America, and they'll talk to me about, hey, what's your journey like getting in there? And the one thing I consistently tell people is it's very lonely.
Yeah.
And not in some
it's
family,
it's
I
like
have
a
friends,
victimized way.
There's people but there are oftentimes you feel as though, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I relate to that statement is you sometimes like, who do I talk to about specifically what I'm dealing with? And if you don't have that, if you have that competition mentality, not that community mentality, you end up saying, well, I don't want to talk to Beau because he might want to steal one of my clients.
Yeah.
Because you can't really tell the story without divulging the client name, so you can really kind of get the whole context, and then, oh, Beau's going to go steal that from me. Like, that's what I do love about the partner community, because we're both digital marketer certified partners, and that's not that feeling in the community. It's much more like you could share the name of the thing and their phone number, and nobody call them. Like, it would be just, no, that's great. Here's some ideas around that. But it is lonely otherwise until you find that community. It's just difficult. And you don't always want to take it home either. Sure. I find myself, my wife is co-founder in the business, but I don't always want to come home and just talk about that. And so then you're like, well, who do I call, and then all your entrepreneur friends are busy,
Yep.
even if they are willing to help you. And so
Yeah.
it's just, I love that statement. It's so true. I bet the whole audience went, oh yeah, right now. On
So
that one.
mark it at the top of your to-do list. Just find it somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Find that
For sure.
community. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think the stat was, if I remember correctly, digital marketer says 250,000 businesses per agency.
Yeah. I think we'll be just fine.
So I think
there's
we're
plenty
okay.
of fish in the sea.
Yeah,
Let's
I
just
think
chill the heck out.
A lot of the
for a
smaller
second.
agencies can
Yeah.
handle 5 to 10 clients a year.
Yeah.
I'm a sales guy, so I'm not real good at math, but that's a lot of years worth of business that you'll never get to. So might as well have community around it. So okay, so I think a little topic wheel is in order.
Let's do
How's
this
that
thing.
sound? This is your idea. I love this. So I'll
So-
have to build like one of those obnoxious like.
Should we just pick a number though? There's like what, 6 or 7
Yeah,
topics.
there's
So
6
just pick a number.
topics. So you want to pick a number between 1 and
6 topics.
6, and then Brian will tell us what that is. I don't even know.
Let's go with 3.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Marketing strategy.
Well, marketing strategy. Now that worked out pretty well.
It happens to be a passion center of mine. I'm going to do this kind of in 2 different lenses,
Okay.
internally and externally.
Okay.
Right. So marketers have the common issue of not being able to market for themselves, and I think we'll start it there. We'll start the hardest part of it, and I think learning to market your agency, I think, starts with your product, which is pretty intuitive, and the people that you want to serve. And I think one of my biggest unlocks that I had in my previous agency was for sure productizing my services based on ultimately value and not deliverables. And yes, the two go hand in hand, but I think starting with figuring out how to map your journey, and in that agency's example, it was called Climb Marketing. We either serve people as their ranger, where we put the map together for them, their guide, where we'd go on the hike with them, but they'd get to carry their own pack and do some work along the way, or as their Sherpa, where we carried the heavy pack and built the tent and woke them up with coffee, and they just moved their feet forward. And intuitively, immediately you understand, I don't even have to tell you about what services were included in those, but you can understand what types of packages we then offer. So it starts there. And then second, it starts with the discipline of actually telling some people about what the heck you do. And doing that in a way that is helpful and isn't, it ain't bragging if it's true. That's what we say as Texans, as native Texans. And I've carried that with me to Colorado. But at some point, you have to learn how to tell the story of what you've done for others and put people in that space where they can see that. And Donald Miller's written a ton on the subject. I don't think that I need to belabor that point. But at any rate, very tactically, we just devote as best I can Friday afternoons to not doing any client work at all. And we chill out a little bit and kind of decompress from the week. But we also look at our website for the first time in a while. We, think about the case studies, the things that we've done. We produce some content, and I think having that discipline at a minimum twice a month has given us the opportunity to actually tell some people about the work that we're doing, and ultimately get more work through doing this thing called marketing. It's pretty amazing.
I love that. So it's the cobbler. I mean, we always use the cliche, the cobbler's children have no shoes or whatever. But you're actually let's make some shoes twice.
Like let's shut down the factory Friday afternoon and let's make some shoes. Right, for ourselves, right? And so I think some really practical ways you can do that, literally just sit down and film some videos and share those videos, right? And so we use a platform called Brandzuka to share those for roughly $25 to $35. You can get 1,000 views on people that are actually interested in professional creative services. Okay. So that's some tactical stuff. Externally, marketing strategy is, I think, one of my absolute passion centers. That's roughly 80% of my day job is handling that and working on clients with that. And so I go consistently back to this idea of not looking at customers to extract value from, but actually to add value. And I think that, of course, no one's going, we're extracting value, but actually modeling against that and actually modeling their customer experience that they're going to have. So there's we prescribe to the customer value journey, which has been written on. Definitely check that out. But I think using that as the framework and actually helping people with their own kind of map. And a lot of people rush the dating process and they go, look at this amazing product I made, buy it. And where we've had the most unlocks for all of our clients over the years, really somewhere between that moment and that moment. And putting more art into that, more thoughtfulness into that, and then also in the back end of that, actually taking care of the people that you just deliver the product to. Mm-hmm. It sounds simple, but I think as far as external marketing strategy, usually those are the things that are broken, that are easily identified and easy to create some quick wins around.
That's awesome. So internal and external. That's a great. When I put that on the topic wheel, I never really thought about the fact agencies, but yet that is a big trouble. I mean, shoot, we've done it. It took me a year to relaunch the website the way I knew it needed to be done
It's
because
so
I
tough.
didn't devote any time to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and
yet
it really
we
comes
built-
down to time. It doesn't come down to what's in here.
Sure.
It just comes down to time.
Right.
And yeah, you definitely might need a few friends along the way to be like, if you're not your own best cheerleader, which I'm not, I can talk about human all day long. I can't talk about myself. This is awkward.
We've noticed that.
But I think surround someone that can really speak into who you are as an agency owner, and then like get that out on paper, or video, or whatever.
Yeah. Which brings a thought in there. That almost sounded like even potentially either somebody inside the company that's really good at it or bringing in external resources.
For sure.
It sounds like
even if it's just for a half day or an afternoon, or a close trusted friend that you're like, hey, I'm kind of weird. Can you just help me understand and put some common language around what makes me weird or halfway smart and as an agency owner, and then I can start to build some content and some themes around that.
it almost sounds like, again, it's interesting as I listen to you talk about that internal and external, again, that theme of harmony coming back, not balance, but harmony coming back into that is making sure you have to take care of yourself and your family in order to make you a better entrepreneur.
Yeah.
In essence. But you also have to take care of the house a little bit inside the company in order to make the house better to serve your clients.
Yeah.
And I think that's as agency owners, I see it all the time. We've struggled with it. Is that if I would just devote the time, I could actually do a better job of fulfillment for my clients.
Sure. Like I had a good buddy that said, "Hey, the secret to life is pretty simple. It's actually found in the back seat of a airplane, safety manual. Put your kid's mask. No, wait. Put your mask on first before you put it on your kids or your babies or whatever. Insert person that you love there." And I think that's the lesson I've learned the hard way, and I don't want to continue to learn the hard way. Is to actually put the oxygen mask on myself and take care of that, because ultimately it's going to help me take care of someone better. I also think like going through a bit of trauma or a little bit of a crazy circumstance is also learning as you build the team that the enemy's out there. They're like, this is not you. You're in the trenches together, and so the sooner that you realize that and you stop infighting as a company, you actually have good resolution. And you talk about ideas, and you can wrestle over ideas, but it's not wrestling over a person. It's wrestling over this concept and this thing that we're building together. The sooner you make that realization and look and turn your attention outward, the more powerful things are going to come. And then the other part of it is just not cutting your supply lines. If you look at how many battles have been lost from those two different things, misaligned vision for where things are going, and cutting your supply line, or your supply line's cut by something else. Maybe it's missed check and whatever. Like maybe you're waiting on money. Those are the things that can totally hamstring you as an agency owner. And so I think reminding yourself every day in your team that, hey guys, enemies out there. Let's align our vision on taking on that part of the business segment or whatever we're going after. And that's not other agencies, for the record. That's just ultimately bad marketing plans that are getting executed and not delivering results for your businesses. That's your enemy. Is like, let's connect good companies with good strategy and grow some businesses. That's it. And not cutting your supply lines, and making sure that your finances are in order, your house is in order, you're getting properly coached, all of that fun stuff. You're physically in a good spot has been an unlock for me. And ultimately, that's all part of putting my oxygen mask on.
Awesome. I love that. I wish there had been an oxygen mask when I went to go mountain biking with you at like 9,000 feet. I definitely needed one, but it was
Just move out there for a little while. You'll acclimatize.
Our view right now is we're 18 floors up, so we're about 200 feet above the water. Yeah. This is what I'm used to. This is the kind of altitude I get where I live. The air's a little thicker down here.
The view doesn't suck though.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
And this interview was awesome. It certainly didn't suck. It was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on. I know the audience really appreciates the things. There are actionable things that I know I will take away from here. Balance is one of them, or the idea of harmony versus balance. I love that. The William Wallace persona, fantastic information, real actionable stuff there. And the story of your family, I think, is an inspiration for many, all really, quite frankly.
Seriously, don't be shy to reach out to me in the middle of that and follow along in our journey. That's part of who I am, and that's for those watching. If you're going through something similar, I'm happy to to pick up the phone and chat with
Is
you.
there a good place that you would like LinkedIn? Is there a place for you to reach out?
It's funny. Instagram is probably my preferred for whatever reason. It's just where I'm naturally drawn to, and so it's just at Beau Haralson, Beau Haralson, Haralson.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Or until Brian hacks into it and changes it to Good Guy Beau. Good Guy Beau. All right, man. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for your time.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I appreciate you guys.